Hello, my name is Ryan Gilbert. Today I'll be talking about the death penalty. This is for Goodwin University, Professor Feitel's class, CJS 101, Criminal Justice and the Law. And without further ado, let me get started on this one. Death penalty is the most largely debated thing throughout all Supreme Court hearings. It's always been an issue um, regarding whether people are for it or against it. Um, Death penalty hasn't always been there for an option. In 1968 to 1976, death penalty was abolished or gotten rid of because it was thought that it would go against the Eighth Amendment. And, and for a short period of time, that being the 8 years that it was taken away, um, there was a lot of people going back and forth on whether or not why it should be legal versus why it shouldn't be. Eventually, it was brought back. Um, the issue with the death penalty is, in some cases, innocent people are sentenced to death, or innocent people in terms of whether they committed the crime themselves, are also uh, punished to death. And there's a lot of instances where people may have done the crime, but the crime doesn't or shouldn't have resulted in the death penalty. Um, Support for death penalty was denied. There was claims of racism being involved, claiming that there was more blacks being put to death than there were whites. That claim of racism was also denied and or rejected. There's been a lot of issues, and as we all know, in terms of geographics, in the country today, I would say most northern states are a lot more lenient with the death penalty, meaning they will. It's very hard to get the death penalty, especially on the West Coast too, like California. I mean, they do have the most death penalties, given, but at the same time, it's very hard over there, and as is in Connecticut. Both legal though in both states. Um, there's something you can do if you are a criminal where you are up for the death penalty, but you yourself and or your attorney does not feel as if you should be getting it. That would be called the plead of insanity or plead for insanity. That pretty much, and just to make a long story short, that sums up that this person is insane. It's right there in the word in and of itself, and it claims that they um, should not be put to death because of their the state of their mental health. Um, there's been a lot of claims by taxpayers, whether it's a waste of their money for the new injections that are coming out to kill these people with. There's constant studies and tests being done to see, what can happen with these ejections. Because a lot of the times, not a lot of times, but there's been many cases where, people have been put to death in quotation marks because, and it hasn't killed them. And that is just cruel and not, it's against our nature. Uh, Death penalty in the United States has been a very uh, strict topic. It comes with a lot of bad stories, and a lot of people are very strongly opinionated on it. In terms of my opinion, I I do not believe the death penalty should be in place. I think that it should be taken out throughout all states because there's a lot of instances, and it's right there in all the books and whatnot. There's a lot of instances where people are put to death when they would really honestly rather be put to death. Um, there's stories, and people have gone on camera and they just can't wait for their excuse me, their last meal because they want to be put to death. Um, Personally, if it was me and if I had killed this many people, um, I would not want to live myself. And that's one of the biggest arguments against death penalty is that you're really doing these people a solid favor when in fact they should be put to jail for killing this many people or doing this heinous crime. And then, of course, the other side to that is people say, oh, well, I don't want to pay for that person to eat, 3 meals a day. And, it's always going to go back and forth. But like I said in the beginning of this video, it is the biggest, and by far one of the biggest debated rulings throughout all Supreme Court. And there's reasonings to that. With that being said, I think I covered a lot of a lot of it. Geographically, like I said before, it's huge. I mean, there are a lot more people being put to death in the southern states than there are in the northern states. And there was one about a month and a half ago where celebrities lined up to petition to not have a man be put to death. I think it was in Alabama, and with everything that was happening, the next day he was put to death. I'm not sure if it was because they thought he was innocent or because they thought he didn't deserve the death penalty. But regardless, there's no leeway given when it comes to death penalty. It's very strict law, and if you're sentenced to it, if someone can get the jury to convict this person of death penalty, it's a serious matter, and you have to get all the jurors to do it, and it's not easy. It relies on a lot of people for this to happen, and it's not necessarily the best option for most people. Like I said before, I think most people want to die, but there are certain cases where people don't want to die, and they're scared to die. And I think killing somebody like that when they are deathly afraid of it is really extremely inhumane, because I'm a firm believer in eye for an eye, but in this case, I don't think it should equate to that, because it doesn't